you know you can go, and doing the things you know you can do. Now, we don't see this clubhouse divider with a stage on top and an audience down below. No. Instead, we look at this as the world's largest breakfast table. It's full of motivation, education, inspiration, and even a friendly competition with the positive intention of pushing your momentum in the right direction. Now, listen, if you ever miss a segment, you can go download the Who You Know Show podcast, subscribe, and listen anytime. So head on over to whoyouknow.show, grab the link, and subscribe. Well, good morning. Welcome to the Who You Know Show by Clear Path Wealth Strategies, where what you know is important, but who you know can make all the difference in your wealth, health, business, career, relationships, and in your life. I'm your host, Trevor Houston, and on this episode, we sit down with Tim Whitmire, co-founder of F3 Nation and the founder of CXN Advisory. Tim shares his profound journey of co-founding the international movement of free workout groups for men, his insights on leadership and goal setting, and his framework for achieving success called the 91% solution. Additionally, Tim opens up about his recovery from a severe stroke at the age of 52 and the critical lessons he learned from that experience. So, Tim, I'm super excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome to the Who You Know Show.
Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So I would like to start off, if you could share a little bit about your journey and what led you to co-found F3 Nation. Can you tell us about the journey? What is F3 Nation? And tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, this was something that a friend of mine and I started here in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2011. The three F's in F3 stand for fitness, fellowship, and faith. Okay. We had encountered a mode of working out together with a group of other guys, literally in a park here in Charlotte, that really changed both of our lives. My co-founder is a guy named Dave Redding, and that really changed our lives. And when that workout was closed to newcomers, it got too big. It got to be about 25 guys, and the guy who had started it felt like that was too many guys. He didn't know everybody who was out there, and so he said, you know what, we're not going to have any newcomers out here anymore. And this was in the summer of 2010, and Dave and I, this is literally a free workout for guys on a jungle gym at the park near downtown Charlotte every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. And you just show up and work out for an hour. It was kind of muscle confusion, all body weight exercises and running. And it made a huge difference in both Dave's and my fitness, as well as kind of the fellowship and the friendships that we developed through that group. And we kind of looked at each other in the fall of 2010 and said, this is crazy. We got to get this in front of more guys. And so what we started on January 1st, 2011 turned out to be a movement that's gone, all across the country and 15 countries around the world now of free workouts that are led by the guys who participate in them. And nobody's holding a clipboard and counting your reps and getting paid. And it's just guys who show up kind of their own free will, and then they form relationships, and those relationships, you mentioned kind of earlier that your audience, folks are trying to kind of progress in life and build wealth and connections and networks, and this was really a solution years before people were talking about kind of the male loneliness epidemic. To that problem. And Dave and I had kind of seen that in our lives. And we felt like this was something that we needed to get in front of more guys. And we were able to find a sustainable model where we were able to grow the group and get it across the country and now around the world. So.
Wow. Okay, so it started off with just a couple guys, and then it started to grow, and now you've got groups all over the globe. And okay, let me ask you this: is this actually turned into a business model, or is this like a nonprofit, or
no?
Just
no. Give it away, man. Give it away. And that, look, I'll tell a story of my stroke later on, and we can sort of get into that. But this was something, we put some copyright protection around it, around the name F3 and the logo. It's fairly distinctive. Um, but we said, you know what, we're gonna run this as a not-for-profit, and we're gonna find a way to make a little bit of. We basically do a royalty on gear sales that bears the logo on it, and
Okay.
that funded our ability to, when we needed to, put guys on planes. But what ends up happening is you give a guy fitness and he's not paying for it, and you give him all these friendships that he develops through the workout group, and there guys are willing to do a lot of stuff for you, like get in a car and drive to the next city to help plant a new workout there, and to encourage people and teach them how to grow it and lead it. So we did it on a model of shared leadership.
Mm.
We never took responsibility. We invested a great deal of time in it over the years, but it was always on a shared leadership model. We were never going to lead every workout. We were never going to be the cult leaders, as it were. We were going to just try to push leadership out in what's called a starfish model. So basically, you have a starfish. Think about the 5 or 6 arms of the starfish, and if one of those arms gets cut off, that starfish can grow into a whole new starfish, right?
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so there's a book called The Starfish and the Spider, and there are starfish organizations where leadership is shared, and you push it out from the center to the periphery, and everybody's capable of leading. And you have spider organizations where if you cut the head off of a spider, the spider is going to die. And we never
Mm.
wanted to run a spider organization. We wanted to basically share leadership, and the mission of F3 is to plant, grow, and serve small workout groups for men to invigorate male community leadership. So
Mm.
there really was the intention from day one, was to get it out there and get guys acting in positions of leadership, because we saw that as a real deficit in society.
Well, yeah, I could definitely understand that. Okay, so and faith is also part of this as well, right? Like you had mentioned, faith is one of the
Yeah,
F's, right?
yeah, that's one of the, so go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you, so I'm sure, I mean, tell me some of the like transformation stories that you've seen through this. I'm sure it's made an impact more than just fitness, right? Like I can imagine that's why people are going, but there's just
Yeah,
probably a lot more. There's fellowship, there's the faith aspect. There's probably, networking connections, like doors are opening,
yeah,
relationship capital, right? Like,
yep.
tell me some stories of like some lives that have been transformed through this movement that you've led on.
Yeah, so I mean, look, that on the faith thing, and I know, my the total addressable market for F3 is basically 50.2% of the world's population, right? All the men in the world, theoretically. Um, but we knew, what we saw happening when guys got involved in the workout was they got fit, right? And that was a relatively easy thing, because you invite a guy to a free workout, and that's a pretty easy invitation to make. Hey, you lost 20 pounds. That's great. How'd you do that? Oh, I'm working out with these guys in the park. You should come along.
It's
That's kind of an
probably easier
easy
to
sell.
do that. Probably easier to do that than invite them to church.
Well, yeah,
Right?
absolutely. And I'll get to that part in a minute. Um, and then the fellowship is really, so that's the magnet, right? It's it's,
Yep.
it's the free workout. The fellowship is the glue. The fellowship is, after you've been in for 6 weeks or 6 months, the alarm goes off. Most of the workouts are in the early morning, so the alarm goes off at 4:45 or 5. You don't really feel like getting out of bed to go do burpees in the dirt, but your friends are going to be there, and they're why you show up. And if you don't show up, you're not going to know about the conversation that's going on on text messaging or Slack or wherever later
So
in the
that
day. And
so
so
there's some
you show up for your
FOMO,
friends.
and
Yeah,
accountability that makes people show
yep,
up. All right, I like
yep.
it.
So that's the glue. But the dynamite was what we saw happening to guys once they were fit and friended, and that the only F word we could come up with to really express that was faith, and that was that guys were no longer living for their own survival. They were no longer living for survival of their immediate family, but they were turning outward and they were saying, how can I make an impact in the community? How can I spread this? And for some guys, it was very much through their religious faith. But F3 is open to men of all faith and no faith. But faith was the best word we could figure out for a guy who is turning outward and is no longer just about his own personal survival. And so that was really the key. So I go back to my, if I started with a total addressable market of 50.2% of the world's population, well, I'm going to get, let's say 7.5% of people who don't like the word faith, right? They're allergic to even that notion, right? They're either actively atheistic or so agnostic that they don't like the word. Okay, so let's say I'm gonna lose 7.5% of my market there. And then there's another 7.5% at the other end of the spectrum who are gonna say, I don't want to work out with you if you don't pray to exactly the same God as the one that I pray to, right? So slice them off. All right, now I have 85% of half of the world's population as my addressable market for this. I'll take that. I'll take that. And so that was sort of the thinking behind that, was that we were trying to reach as many people as possible with this.
Well, I can imagine you're having an impact, and let me explain why. I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable here, okay? Because I've been single for the past call it year and a half, okay?
Okay.
And I had a relationship prior to that was about 4 years long, and anyway, so I've been single for the past year and a half, and you know what? It does get lonely, right? I'll tell you that there are times, you know what I'm saying? Like I've got friends, but I don't have a big group of friends. Like I don't have like a giant, you see, stuff where people got all these friends and stuff like that. Like I just don't. Like I have people, colleagues, right? I got acquaintances, and then I've got like a couple of close friends that I've grown up with. They're like family to me, right? Just a couple.
Yep.
But their lifestyle is a little bit different from mine. Like I don't have any kids. I'm not married. They've got a family and kids and all this kind of stuff. So things are a little bit different. So like we're not always get to hang out and see each other and all that stuff. And so it does get lonely from time to time. And so that fellowship part of what you're talking about, that community aspect, having a group of people that you can lean on, is actually something that I could value from. You have a group here out in Dallas?
Yeah, we absolutely do. We absolutely do. So first thing for the male listeners who are out there, and I'll talk about the women in just a minute, but for the guys who are out there, f3nation.com is the website. And the very prominent link on the front page is to a workout finder. And you put your zip code in there, and you're going to see a list of all the closest workouts to you, and where they meet and when, and there's a whole locator thing and stuff like that. So first of all, if you show up, tell them OBT sent you. That's my F3 nickname.
Okay.
And I'm the co-founder. OBT.
Oh, OBT. Okay.
Yeah, and that's and people know me and know me as the co-founder. So tell them OBT sent you. But yeah, and show up, because look, there's nothing that F3 guys love more than what we call an FNG, and FNG stands for friendly new guy. At least that's what we tell people the F stands for, is friendly new guy. But they love having a new guy out there, and it's maybe it's because that guy's not in really great shape, so at least there'll be somebody behind you in the pack. But it's also because you get to be witness to a guy kind of getting a face full of this thing that we've grown to love, and that is going to change his life. And that's an awesome thing to see, and it's awesome to kind of track people's journeys through that. So I mean, it's been transformational for me, obviously, and I get to be the co-founder and have that. But the stories, and you referenced this earlier, I mean, we've had guys who have gone into who've basically strengthened were in recovery prior to coming to F3, and this becomes kind of their new drug or alcohol, or this fitness, and sort of that becomes the thing for them. We've had guys undergo career changes through this. We've had guys start really meaningful companies as a result of friendships that they formed through F3. And it's, one thing I do tell people is never show up and be selling. And we have I was going to say this to you a little bit earlier. We're in what we call the circle of trust right now, Trevor. You can be as vulnerable as you want to be here. And every workout ends with what we call a circle of trust. And you basically get together in a circle and you count the number of guys who are there, and you go around and everybody says their F3 nickname, as well as what we call your hospital name, which is the name you were given in the hospital before they really knew who you were. And then you say your age, because we kind of want to know where you are in the journey of life. And then there's usually some sort of a shout out, and it might be a prayer of a particular faith, but it might just be kind of words of wisdom or something like that, and announcements. And that's a chance for guys to kind of share that vulnerability or ask for help with the stuff that's in their lives. And it's pretty awesome to watch it work.
So you get a name. I didn't know this. You get a name before your birth name, like before you're named?
You get a name when you first show up. So basically, your first F3 workout. I told you earlier, my nickname is OBT.
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about that. You said something about like the name at birth.
Oh well, no. You say because you want people to know your real name as well, right? So,
okay.
So you would if
I misunderstood what you said. I misunderstood what you said. I thought you were saying like
no. We're not really renaming people, but okay. I mean the problem. The problem is you end up seeing guys on the street, maybe if you're working downtown or something, and you see a guy and you're like, hey, hey carburetor, or hey fact check or whatever, and it's like, wait, I don't actually know his real name. I can't call him by his real name because I only know him by his F3 nickname. So
okay, all right.
So. But is this
because this have anything to do with the faith side about how Jesus was always renaming people?
I think there's some. Look, it's all very tribal, right? I mean, it's we have our own lingo and language. I referred to FNG for friendly new guys. There's F3 lingo and acronyms for everything, and so that's just sort of part of the culture. It's like being in any kind of jargon-laden environment. If you've ever been in the military, I did not serve.
Look, I'm in the insurance and financial services. We got all kinds of acronyms. Okay, we got acronyms. We got more acronyms. We got alphabet soup up in here.
Yeah,
so I get it.
Yeah, so you get that nickname, and that's your F3 name, and there's an element of for some guys of transformation, and I'm reborn, and this is who I am now. But it's also the name by which your guys know you as well. So
okay, that's interesting. All right, I just didn't know if that had anything to do with the faith side of like in the Bible, Jesus was always renaming people. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And calling them out for who the name they were supposed to be. Right. So anyway, okay, cool. So I want to switch gears just a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
I love what you do with that. That's awesome. Definitely going to look that up myself. See if there's a local group I can get part of. That'd be cool. Yeah. Now 91% solution, right? You have this framework for goal setting, achievement, and tell us a little bit about what that entails. Is this anything like close, like 91%? Like why not 100? Like tell me about this.
Because it's impossible to go 100% all the time.
Oh, okay.
And it's actually unhealthy to go 100% all the time. And this is kind of my protest against the perfection culture and the because it's unachievable. Not everything in life is a peak experience, and not everything can be and should be. And nothing. If you're trying to be at basically, if you get to the summit of the mountain, the reason that you don't stay there very long is because there's nowhere to sleep at the summit of the mountain, and there's no plateau, and there's no place that you reach that is eternal nirvana. It's just every day is a grind and every day is a climb, and if you try to go 100% all the time, you're going to burn out and you're going to bust up. And I mean, I just, I trained and I ran marathons in 43 different states before I had my stroke. I can't do that anymore, but I've run, dozens and scores of long distance races, 26 miles and more. And I learned through training for that you cannot go all out all the time, and the importance of sort of pacing yourself and um, and giving yourself some grace in life as well. And I see a world out there where everybody's 100% achievement all the time, and social media amplifies it. Everybody wants to be perfect on their social media feed. I'm doing all my bucket list things. You mentioned FOMO earlier. I was in the Netherlands a couple years ago. I was at the Rijksmuseum to see an exhibit of Vermeer paintings, and Vermeer painted on very small canvases. He's one of the old masters of Dutch painting, and so I literally could not get a look at these paintings because of all the people crowded around them taking smartphone photos of these paintings on the wall of the museum. And we have this culture of like, I have to do everything, I have to see everything, I have to prove that I saw it with my smartphone. And no smartphone photo of a Vermeer painting is ever going to be as good as what you could, at the resolution that you could see it on a computer. Like there's no point in it. Like put the smartphone down and look at the painting with your own eyes. But we just have this culture where people are, trying to capture everything all the time and achieve this sort of state of perfection and constant achievement that's honestly not healthy. And where I got it from, I'll tell you the origin story of it is my oldest son, who's a second lieutenant in the Army now. He was in an international baccalaureate program in his high school, and one of the things about that program is that they don't distinguish between A minus or A plus or just a plain A. Once you're over 90, you've got an A. And Alex, I really learned to admire this with him because he's just unflappable, and he never really cared that. Like if it was a subject that he didn't really care that much about, he would get to that 91 and he'd be like, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to stay up late working on it. I know I can get that 91. Now, if it was something we really loved, like history or international relations or something, he would do it, and he would get a 98 or a 99. But I always admired that ability to kind of do as much as you need to do, but let's not be killing ourselves over stuff that's maybe not in our wheelhouse all the time.
Okay, so. I got you. So it's like, we got this hustle mentality, right? Grind all the time, right? And you need to have some balance in there. And I agree with you. I was actually just this past weekend, I went to Arkansas to visit my father, and we're kayaking down the river and all this, that, and the other. And there was just so much beauty we were checking out over the weekend. And as I was taking pictures, I'm like, man, these pictures don't do this justice at all. Like it doesn't do it justice. Like seriously, I'm like, these are great pictures, but it doesn't even come close to like, man, just the being there. And so I get it. And we do live in this culture of just having to put everything out there all the time, constantly, go. And you need some time to unplug and unwind, I think personally.
Yeah.
That's why I like camping. A lot of people think I'm crazy. I'm old school. Put me outside. Okay. I want to camp. Okay. I want to turn the phone off and get me a fishing pole and a cold beer. Okay.
Yeah.
Give me a fishing pole and a cold beer. Let me just sit there and chillax. And you know what? Just get in my head, get in my thoughts, and just peace and quiet, hearing the river flow, right? It's just something about it. And then that fishing pole starts going bing, 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 bing. And I'm like, hey, I was out there fly fishing this past weekend. That was awesome, man. Anyway, so yeah, I like to get out in nature. You got to learn to shut it off every once in a while. Otherwise, you're going to lose your hair.
Yeah, and I look when I coach executive leadership teams all the time, and look, you got a lot of Type A leaders in the business world and in corporate world, and a lot of people who are driving really hard. A lot of founders are this way. They want they're 100% invested in their company and the success of that company. And what I tell people all the time is they're not the people on your leadership team are not in 100% alignment with you on exactly what they're going to achieve if they pour their souls into this. Hopefully they're 100% aligned with what they specialize in within the company, or the areas of responsibility within the company, but those are different from your goals, right? And if you can achieve 91% alignment with your executive team, that's going to be better than most executive teams, because and you can see the crew boat on the poster over my shoulder. I rode crew as an undergraduate in college, and you got 8 guys in a crew boat, and the only way that boat moves with any speed and any momentum is if guys are in complete sync with each other, guys or
Mm,
girls. And they've got to be timing their when they put their oar in the water at exactly the same moment. They've got to be recovering on the sliding seat at the same rate. They've got to be pulling with the same efficiency. And if you can get all that balanced and in sync, then you can really make that boat go. If you don't get it balanced and in sync, the boat's going to be tipping back and forth. People are going to be banging their oars on top of the water or skying them up in the air, and the boat won't move through the water with any efficiency. And so
mm.
that's the animating kind of analogy that I use, or metaphor that I use to coach executive teams, because the coxswain, the little guy guy or girl who sits in the front of the boat and coaches them, is the person who tries to get everybody in alignment and rowing together. And it's really hard. So any executive team that can move with 91% efficiency, that's a huge win, because most people want to pull in their own direction and want to set their own goals and move the way that they want to move. And any team that you can get to move together with that kind of alignment is going to be successful. So
Well,
that's a win.
That's why I'm an entrepreneur, because that's me. I'm the one that's wanting to pull my own direction. I like
Yeah,
that's why you know what I'm saying? Because yeah, for those of you that are listening, if you're working in corporate America and you find yourself trying to like go against the grain all the time, okay, like you might be an entrepreneur in disguise. You know what I'm saying? You might want to look at, starting your own thing or starting a side hustle and eventually making the escape from corporate America, because it just wasn't for me. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm always constantly questioning things, like, well, I don't know about that. Can we do it this way? Let's do it that way. Let me try this way. Blah, 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 blah. Because I have a very creative mindset. Like I'm always looking for a better way, constantly. And so, when they're like, it's done this way and this is the way it's always been done, and we got to do it this way, I'm like, why? I've always been that guy. That's always been me. Let me try, let me try this, let me try that. And so if that's you and you're listening to this right now and you're that against the grain kind of a person, you've got that kind of mindset, you might be an entrepreneur, right? And you might want to check that out,
Yep, absolutely. No, I tell my wife, and it drives her a little crazy sometimes, but I left my last corporate job in 2017, and that was after kind of I started my career as a journalist, and then I worked for several financial services firms. But I got to a point, we'd been successful enough with what we did with F3 where I felt comfortable kind of going out on my own, and I said to my wife a couple of times, I'm an outdoor cat now. I'm not. You're not going to be able to keep me indoors.
Put you back in the cage.
Yeah,
Put you back in the
exactly.
cage. Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. It's a cage, in my opinion. But hey, some people do well in the corporate world, and that's totally cool. That's totally cool. It's not. Being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. Being a business owner, not for everybody. There's lots of ups and downs, and you got to weather some storms. And some people are meant I look at it like this: you have creators, and you have
Yep.
consumers,
Yep.
right? And you just have to know what you are, right? And accept it. And it's okay to be one or the other. It's all right. Are you creating things for the marketplace, or are you consuming things in the marketplace? What are you doing?
Yep.
Me personally, I'm a creator. I like to create. That's why we're doing stuff like this. So
Yep.
anyways, but let's move to, I want to talk about your journey with your stroke in 2022. That
Yeah.
I'm sure that had to be very challenging. I remember my great aunt actually passed from a stroke. She had 2 strokes, and the second one was the one that did her in. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I know it's hard. And can you tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about the recovery and like what you learned from that process of going through that? I mean, you look great now.
Yeah.
So
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so look, I went in, I was born 6 weeks premature in 1970, which was a pretty big deal back then. I was in the ICU for a while, so I'd had some health problems from the very start. And so I grew up. There was always, kind of a heart murmur that they could hear when they checked me out, and the heart murmur got a little worse in 2022. And my doctor said, "Hey, let's do an echocardiogram and let's see what's going on." It turned out I had snapped a cord on one of the valves that was between my atrium and left ventricle of my heart, and so I was getting backflow from the oxygenated blood that was flowing backwards into the atrium, and my heart was having to work too hard um, uh, to do its job and get the oxygenated blood out to the cells. So the solution was let's do surgery. Let's go in and repair that. And I wasn't feeling any effects. In the long run, this might have killed me. I might have had a heart attack eventually or something, but the surgery was really just to prevent further problems down the road. Um, and unfortunately, at some point when I was on the heart lung machine during this surgery, I had a severe drop in blood pressure to my brain and to blood flow to my brain, and so woke up kind of 3 days after the surgery and basically couldn't move my upper body, and I've had to kind of was able to get back up on my feet fairly quickly, but have had to relearn, a lot of stuff. This hand is still not 100%. My left arm is still fairly impaired, and
oh my
so
gosh.
really had to kind of relearn a lot of stuff. Fortunately, not really any cognitive problems, no speech impairment or anything like that. I had
Let's
some
let's time
visual.
out. Let's time out if you don't mind for just a second. I want you to go
Yeah.
back to that moment when you woke up and you couldn't move. Tell
Yeah.
me, like, describe that moment for me, because that's got to be terrifying.
Well, what I was told by the nurses in the ICU afterwards was that I spent the 2 nights after the stroke basically yelling at them about where my wife was and when she was going to get there. So
Mm.
I had my priorities in the right place. I knew who I needed to see and who could help me. But it just look, man. It was it was a blow. I mean, I didn't know whether I was going to be able to care for myself again, right? I didn't know whether I was going to be institutionalized, whether I was going to need some sort of permanent live-in assistance to go about my daily business. I knew I was fine mentally, but I also, I flashed on one of my father's closest friends who had passed away the previous year after he had a stroke, and he was in such bad shape. He basically, kind of committed assisted suicide.
Mm.
After that. And I remember my brother showed up the, about 5 days after I had the stroke, and I was like, man, I kind of understand what Brownie was going through now. My dad's friend. This is really bad. I don't know. And the thing that happened was he came in and he was the one. Sarah, my wife, and God bless her, and she. I mean, I could not have recovered without her and without my kids, but she's very private. and she did not want to share kind of what had happened. People knew that I'd gone in for surgery, my clients, everybody in F3, but she was pretty closed-mouthed about it. She's in corporate communications, so she knows how to manage stuff. And my brother, the first thing he said was, "Look, man, you spent the last 11 years building this international network of guys who owe you a tremendous debt for what you brought into their lives. Like, you've got all these close friends through F3. We need to kind of reach out to some of these guys and let them know what happened." And so he was the one who really helped me. I dictated the first kind of text message to him, to a couple of my buddies here in Charlotte who are my best friends in F3. And we kind of got the word out through them. And so I was in a rehab hospital for a month after the stroke. And I was working out kind of physical therapy and occupational therapy 4 to 5 hours a day. And it was exhausting, but I had every single PT workout that I did in the hospital, I had a different F3 guy there to do it with me and to keep me company and to make sure that I wasn't alone in it. And there's a saying in F3 is never leave the six behind. And the six refers to your butt, which is your 6th point of contact with the earth, and sort of army lingo. But no, basically pick up the six as kind of an F3 mentality. Don't ever leave a man behind. And so I saw that at work in my recovery, and I had guys visiting me all the time. I had nurses who were like, "How many friends do you have?" And I said, "This is it's a friendship machine." And so that was just a huge part of my recovery. And I founded this thing in 2011, and as you said earlier, we never monetized it. Never particularly wanted to monetize it, but what you don't realize when you do something like that is that you're building the ark that's going to carry you to safety when the flood comes. And that was, yeah.
And a lot of times people look at like monetizing something, in a direct sales kind of environment. But I just know that you have monetized in other ways. Like you've been able to benefit from this group in other ways, and that is a form,
absolutely.
Like it probably in ways that are priceless, right?
Yeah.
Like this exact example right here. Like you were, in a position where you needed that group, and they were there for you. You know what I'm saying? That's priceless. Like you can't put a price tag on that. The relationship. I mean, this is the Who You Know show, right? It's all about relationship, capital, and I love what you built there, and that's a really cool example of how these relationships have really helped you in your life. Let's switch gears just a little bit here, if you don't mind. I want to talk about CXN Advisory. Okay, you focus on guiding executives and leadership teams. How do you use this relationship building and as a foundation for strategic alignment? You talked about alignment earlier. Why is this approach so impactful in business?
Because ultimately, it's about teaching leadership teams to be relational and not transactional, right? And people think of business and they think of like, I've got to close the sale, I've got to monetize this, I've got to whatever. And the reality is, and you can look at the Harvard, the long-term Harvard study of lifetime happiness that was written up in a book called The Good Life. And if you read that book, they surveyed all these guys who were undergraduates at Harvard in the 1930s and 40s and tracked them through their whole lives and assessed their happiness at various junctures. And the one thing that came back, no matter how much or how little money they made in their lives, no matter what went on, was the strength and quality of their relationships was what was the single best indicator of a successful or happy life. And that, to me, and that holds true in the business world as well. Like if you can teach leadership teams to relate to one another, to align on certain goals, to maybe compromise about some things that, if you had 100% of your way, you wouldn't necessarily do it that way, but you gotta sacrifice for the greater good of the team. And that's where the CXN thing comes in, because there are no CXN stands for the coxswain, and that's if you spell it out, the word is spelled COXSWAIN, and it's the little guy who sits in the front of the boat and coaches the rowers in the boat. And so after I had done this for a little while, I realized that I was serving as a coxswain for my leadership teams. I wasn't ever pulling on the oars, right? And the coxswain doesn't pull on the oars. The coxswain is dead weight in a crew boat. So the only way you can justify your existence in the crew boat, if you're the coxswain, is you get them in alignment and you coach them well enough that they can be in alignment and they can make the boat go and they can pull with dedication and alignment. So I view myself as a coxswain for leadership teams, and so my goal is to get them in a room, understand them, relate to them at a relational level, and then get them to relate to each other on that level, so that they don't have to love each other, right? But there is and I'm sure you played sports growing up. I'm sure you've been in some locker rooms. You look fairly fit. There is a certain love that grows up in a locker room of guys who are pulling together for the same goal, right? And or girls for that matter. So and that exists in a crew boat, and that should exist in a leadership team if you're trying to achieve growth in any kind of setting.
Yeah, I love it. There's a lot of synergy between sports and business, right? There's a lot of it.
Yeah.
And one of the things, though, I do want to touch on that you had mentioned earlier was about, transactional and relationship, in business.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm in financial services, and one of the things that it's a relationship business. Obviously, we're, ultimately you're selling trust, right? If someone's going to want to work with you with their finances, right? Because it's such a close subject for a lot of people, their finances. Sure. And so it takes trust. So, you got to build relationship and things like that. However, one of the things that I talk with my team about is, like, there is such thing as too much. Okay. In the beginning, like in the early stages. Like, I want to build relationship through doing business, not necessarily, like, we don't have to be like best friends to do business.
Right.
And like a lot of times people think that, like, oh, I've got to really, really build this super solid relationship, before I ask for the business. I'm like, no, you don't. You need to build trust. Okay. You need to build trust, and the relationship takes time. Relationships don't just happen. You know what I'm talking about? They can.
Oh, no. Yeah, absolutely. And I look, you may have experienced this as well. There's a season for everything, right? This is directly from Ecclesiastes, of course, but and there's also nothing new under the sun, but, like, there's a season for everything in life. And I've had a lot of client relationships where you kind of grow and you mature and you build that relationship over time, and there's trust. But eventually you need to part ways. And I'm sure you've had people where, they've evolved, you've evolved, maybe it's time to move on and do something else with somebody else. But that initial relational piece can't be replaced, right? You've got to have that connection and that initial trust.
Yeah, you do have to have the connection, the initial trust, the credibility, the authority.
Yeah.
You got to know what you're talking about. All of those things are in place, and then make them a client and then build on that relationship, right? And so I just see a lot of, insurance and financial professionals. There's a train behind you.
I got a train going behind. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good. I was like, what is that? I just see a lot of insurance and financial professionals where they want to again, they want to be like super close before they ever ask for the business. And then maybe that's a insecure. It comes from a place of insecurity. I'm like, no, make them a client first, make them a client and then build your relationship through that. Like, you know, it's not transactional. Okay. It's like, it would be transactional if you made them a client and then never talk to them again. Okay. That'd be transactional, but you're not going to do that. You're going to be servicing them. You're going to be, you know, having reviews, and you're going to be, you know, doing these things through time, and you know, you have time to work with them. So anyways, I just wanted to point that out, because a lot of times when we're talking about that, I see people do get a little bit confused by that. It's like, no, go ahead and make them a client, and then build on that relationship over time. Okay, let's talk about your book. Okay, so you have your book called The 91% Solution, right? Coming up.
That's in progress. That's we're working on that. So that's not been published yet. So the book I have written, which contains a lot of stuff that's going to probably be repeated in the 91% Solution, but is called Freed to Lead, and that I co-authored that with Dave Redding, my F3 co-founder, and that's sort of the story of how we founded F3, and that's, you can find that on Amazon. It's in a second edition now, which actually you were mentioning kind of some of the inspirational stories from F3 earlier. We had guys write essays about what F3 had done in their lives, and so Dave and I tell our own stories in that book, but we interspersed among the chapters with these essays from guys about like what F3 has done in their lives, and it's very, very cool to read. So.
Okay, cool. So you guys go, make sure you go pick up a copy of that. And for the listeners who feel, you know, moved by your stories, your insights, and all of that, how can they connect with CXN Advisory? What can they do there?
Yeah, so the website is www.cxnadvisory.com. And then if you go to that address, .com/call, you can book a free call with me, and it's just 1 hour, and I do that, you know, kind of pro bono for folks, really for anyone. And I'll look at, as you've probably heard, I've got a lot of advice for everybody on a lot of different topics. You mentioned, you know, career changers, people kind of trying to figure out what they're going to do, folks who are out of work. Maybe you have an entrepreneurial idea and you want some feedback on, and you feel like I'm somebody that maybe has some thoughts on that. Look, book a call and we can talk. And if it develops into a client relationship, that's great. If not, what I tell people is I usually get enough. I usually get enough from them that of stories that I can tell to other clients, that it ends up sort of serving me in my advisory practice as well. So happy to do that, and just sort of kind of put that out there for folks if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're giving your most valuable resource. So I just appreciate that. You're giving your time. It's the one thing that, heck, we don't even know how much we got. Okay. It's that scarce. You don't know if you're going to breathe another second. You know what I mean? So
I experienced that profoundly. So.
Yeah, exactly. And you're giving them a whole hour. Okay. Listen, man, you're giving your most valuable asset. So we just appreciate you over here on the Who You Know show. You guys make sure you take him up on that. This guy's got a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I guarantee you, you know, again, you can learn something from this man. So make sure you go ahead and do that. The link will be in the show notes of the podcast. So make sure you go ahead and grab that and get on his calendar and let him know where you heard him from. Okay. Let him know, hey, I heard you on the Who You Know show. Okay. With Trevor. And that way he knows what's up. Okay. Represent for the Who You Know show around here. Okay. Any last words for the audience before we part ways?
No, you know, Trevor, look, you touched on it a minute ago of like, we don't know how much time we have left. And you know, I could have died, in the hospital there. I could have died on the table. So it really is, it's all about relationships, and it's all about living life without any regrets. You know, my daughter is a big Taylor Swift fan. So one of the things I did last summer was dropped several $1,000s to get tickets to go see Taylor Swift last summer, and went with her to see that. So after the stroke, I basically had an attitude of I'm not going to put off the things that I want to do, or doing things with the people I love, because we don't know how much time we're going to have left. So
yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Thanks, Tim, so much for being on the show. Guys, that's the
man.
show. It's all about who you know. Bye.